Movie night. Andy and Gabe. Andy and Gabe watch movies. I was thinking that for our new intro. Is it unbearably cringe?
Well, I think I don't immediately dislike it. I think it's a little distasteful to turn movies into a three-syllable word. But yeah, I think that would be fine.
Hello and welcome to Movie
Hello.
Night. We're back. We're back. For
Back.
you, this will have been a week if I'm committed. But for us, it's been an eternity.
Yep.
We talked about Godzilla and that last week, and then we went to talk about Dick Tracy, and then we had problems that we couldn't finish the recording. Gabe fucking booked a washing machine repair for the day we were recording, and a bloke like rocks up and is like, "Hi, I'm here to do the washing machine." And you know what? Our washing machine's broke at the moment as well, and my mother-in-law wants to get it written off, but they won't do it. But none of this matters. We're back, and we are talking about William Friedkin's 1977 movie Sorcerer. So, the setup of Sorcerer: four blokes with checkered pasts in the jungle have to transport volatile dynamite across the jungle to stop an oil fire. I had seen it, and the second I watched it, I went, okay, we got to do one on this, and then began the 3-month wait for Gabriel to see it. But you saw it last night, right?
I saw it last night. I watched it twice.
You watched it twice, really? Okay. I'm surprised. You don't usually watch the films we do twice.
No, that's true. That's true.
So, so
Huh?
tell me about that then.
Well, let me ask you a question. How did you come into contact with this movie? Why would a young man like yourself be interested in an obscure movie like this from the 70s that very few people had heard of, even when it came out? I'm curious.
I love The Exorcist. I've seen The Exorcist twice, and I'm lucky enough that both times I saw it in a cinema. For once for a special Halloween screening that a local cinema were doing, and once for, I want to say, the 40th anniversary of the film. I love The Exorcist, one of my favourite movies, and William Friedkin was the director of that, so I wanted to see the other films that he did. And then I saw this one. I saw that it was in the jungle, and
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah, we'll talk
were in
about
the
that.
jungle.
I'm definitely going to talk about that. I'm definitely going to give you shit for that. When did you see it? When did you first see this movie?
I saw it about 2 or 3 months ago for the first time.
Oh, okay. 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 Well, now that we've established that, I guess I'll begin my analysis by pointing out that I it seems to me that you and I are beginning to have something of a pattern in our relationship as co-viewers on this channel. It seems to me this is the second time that you've had me watch a rather long movie where people are in the jungle. They are the main characters. There's a ensemble of characters that are sort of the suffering hero, and they have to get through hard times in order to have just a shot at a normal life after terrible circumstances befall them. Because it's worth noting that in this movie, the four principal characters, they all had to flee their home. They're all from different countries. They have no association with each other, and they all had to flee to Central America, or South America rather, in order to escape their checkered past. And those elements seem to be fairly common, at least in one other film. And of course, the film that I'm thinking of is Papillon.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like Papillon.
Okay.
I thought this was a masterpiece.
Wow, I really
I-
didn't know if you would like it. I really
Yeah,
didn't know
I
if
thought-
you'd like it.
I thought this was a masterpiece. I thought that I had a very similar, not identical, but a very similar experience to when you had me watch Mulholland Drive, where it I started out not liking it much at all, and as time went on, I realized that I was watching one of my what would soon become one of my favorite movies. Um, I, I'm gonna just mention this briefly. My brother and I, who some people may remember as Confused Matthew, um, we have a very strange, quirky sense of humor when it comes to certain things. And this movie, there are scenes in this movie, and there are ways that it's shot that trigger that particular sense of humor. So it had that value to it. There were some rather funny, unintentionally funny scenes in it that probably would only make sense to me and Dan. And the reason I bring that up is uh, I can always tell when a movie is going to be something that jives with me if that's an element of it. Um, but I really think that the way that this movie is constructed is one of the most unique and engaging and compelling narrative structures that I've seen. You have four very interesting stories in themselves, and those four stories meet each other and have to do this dangerous thing for as I say, for just a shot, not at riches, but at being able to live comfortably in a new place when they've escaped. And just the stories that unfold between the characters individually and together, I thought were terrific. I was not expecting to see the quality of effects that we see at the end of the film. I was not expecting that. Not only the quality of the effects, but the way the movie's shot. It looked like it was made in 1987 as opposed to 77 to me. I'll say one other thing about the cinematography, and then I'll let you tell me what you thought of it and why. And then you'll probably want to talk about the production too, which I'm sure you're dying to get to that. In movies that were made in the 70s and even in the 80s, there was this odd, hokey way that they would film gun violence. In a lot of movies in that era, you would have an establishing shot that there's a guy holding the gun. Then you would have a cut to the guy that's about to get shot. Then you would have a cut to a close-up of the gun. The gun would fire. Then you would cut to the guy getting shot, and the guy would go, "Ugh," and fall down. One of the first things I noticed in this movie is that I don't know if this is the right term, but there was a sort of tracking shot where it was it was a handheld camera. They were moving the camera by hand, and they followed the person holding the gun. A guy ran into the frame, and they just shot him then and there in one shot as the camera was tracking. And I wasn't expecting to see something like that in a movie that was made in 1977. That was more common like in the late 80s or even the 90s to filming gun violence like that. That was really good. Just those little touches combined with everything I said about the characters in the story made this it's incredibly underrated. It's criminally underwatched by people, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about why. So there's my take on it. Over to you. What did you think of it?
Well, I really wasn't expecting you to love it like that. I was not. So I don't pick films based on whether or not I think you'll like them. I pick films based on whether or not we could have an interesting conversation about them. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes if it's just like, oh, I love this film and I really want you to see it. I love this film and I really wanted you to see it, and I thought we'd have an interesting conversation about it. So William Friedkin was part of what they call the New Hollywood era. He was a filmmaking pioneer. He did The Exorcist and everybody loved it and had heart attacks in the cinema and whatever else they want you to believe about the release of that film. But the bottom line is that movie was a cultural touchstone. So he wanted to do a movie based on Wages of Fear, which was a novel he read. But he changed the setting to be a South American jungle rather than, I believe the book is in like the desert or the savannah or something like that. And I'm sure this will shock you. He wanted Steve McQueen for the role. I wonder
No.
why. So he wanted Steve McQueen for the role. Steve McQueen said, I would do it, but I have just got married. I've already been in the jungle once for Papillon. I've just got married and I don't want to be away in the jungle all that time, but my wife can't take a break from work to come with me. Can she have a job on this movie? And William Friedkin was like, well, sorry, but no, because I would have to rewrite the script to fit her in. And I think your wife is a phenomenal actress. I'm really sorry to the lady. I can't remember what her name is. He goes, I think she's a phenomenal actress, but no. And Steve McQueen said, that's not a deal breaker for me. I'd do it if we shot it in America. And William Friedkin went, no, jungle. I'm not compromising on this. And this was very much the era where filmmakers didn't compromise. So they agreed, basically, not this time, maybe next time. And he got Roy Scheider, who was known for Jaws. I think he'd been in Jaws by this point in time. Essentially, William Friedkin couldn't get the cast he wanted, so he cobbled together the actors that he could, and then they went to the jungle, they filmed the movie. The movie came out. It tanked. Not only did it tank, it chugged. It did awfully. It did awfully at the box office. It did awfully with critics. They had to put notices on the movie posters saying that it was not a foreign language film because Americans were walking in, they heard foreign languages and they left. Not only that, Star Wars opened in a very short span of time. The original Star Wars, 1977, right around the same time. Didn't help matters. Then, I think a little while later, Heaven's Gate came out. A big epic western by the director of The Deer Hunter. And that one tanked too. And that was when you really start seeing the shift of the movies of the 70s, where you would get a Papillon, which I know you don't like, or a Deer Hunter, or a Sorcerer. And the studio started to, I will say, interfere more and try to make more bankable, safe movies, particularly in the 80s. So, fast forward 30 years, and this film just through, I think, screening at a film festival, just saw a renaissance. And people started saying, I think we were wrong about Sorcerer. And then film critics like Mark Kermode go, William Friedkin, what is it like to have this film that was considered a stain on your career finally being recognised as a masterpiece? And William Friedkin just went, well, I always knew the film was good. But yeah, that's a bit about the background of just how this film culturally impacted Hollywood. And whether you want to say it was a positive or a negative, it depends on what sort of movies you like. But that was the story, essentially, of how it did.
Yeah, let me unpack a little bit of that because that's interesting to me. I did not know. How funny is it that I was the one initially to make the link between Papillon and this movie, and it turns out that he wanted Steve McQueen, and Steve McQueen, one of the reasons that he had to turn it down was because he had recently done Papillon. How funny is that? Knowing that now, I think Roy Scheider did such an amazing job in this film. He had, and I think this is one of the reasons that I liked it and I didn't like Papillon, is that I found the characters more in Papillon, to me, and this may have just been my own hang-ups or whatever, but to me it seemed like the characters, the only thing driving those characters was that it sucks being in prison and they didn't want to be in prison anymore. And that was about the long and the short of what they were ever going to be in that movie. In this one, it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar. It sucks that they have to be in hiding, in basically in exile, and they don't want to be in exile anymore. They want to. So it's kind of similar, but the Roy Scheider played it with such a sensitivity. He had such a vulnerability to him that and he I don't think Steve McQueen would have given the, in fact I know he wouldn't have, because I know what kind of performance he gave in the last movie that was kind of like that, and it was different, not necessarily bad, but I don't think it would have been right for what this was.
I mean, he won the Gandhi Award for Best Lead Actor, so like it's not like and we both unanimously agreed for that. So it's not like you don't appreciate his work in that film.
No, of course, critically acclaimed Gandhi Award winner Steve McQueen, of course, is a fine, terrific actor. I think that would have been all wrong, or maybe it wouldn't have been all wrong. I think what Scheider brought to the part was exactly what that character needed.
Do you think the film might have been a bigger box office success if Steve McQueen had been in it?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I think and I don't think it really. I've looked into a little bit of this, probably not as much as you, but I looked into a little bit of this. I also don't think it had anything to do with Star Wars. Star Wars may have kept it in a different universe, may have kept it from being like number one at the box office. It may have kept it from being the highest grossing movie of that year, but I don't think it would have taken a $25 million movie and given it a $5 million profit. I think what happened was, it sounds like Universal and Paramount co-produced the movie, and then each one of them expected the other to front the advertising budget, and each one of them expected the other to pay to have it in theaters, and each one of both of them shirked the budgeting responsibilities onto the other one, and nobody could agree on who was responsible for what, so they just didn't advertise it. And it sounds to me like what happened was that both studios just slit the thing's throat before it could even have a chance. And I don't think any amount of Steve McQueen or no Star Wars or any of that would have changed that. I think in a different universe where that was released next to nothing, it would have died in the theater. It would have died a quick death because the studios didn't promote it. And then once it was made, they didn't want to have anything to do with it.
So talking about the film itself, I think I actually said fair warning. I went, just so you know, the beginning of this film is slow. Yeah. And then you had to go to the shops or something like that, and you said, I think I've watched about 75% of it. And I went, okay. And you went, I don't think I've got that much to say about it though, so I'll just bounce off of you. So to go from that to like literally the next day, you going, I've seen it twice and I think it's a masterpiece and it's now one of my favourite movies. That is flawed. That's floored me. Absolutely floored me. I'm shocked at that. Yeah,
I'll tell you how that happened. When I was about 75% of the way through, I went, you know what? This is kind of four guys. Sort of like Papillon. This is just kind of four guys that just don't want to be in exile and they just want a little bit of a better life for themselves. And then the more I thought about it, I went, wait a second. The guys, well, that would be a spoiler actually. I don't want to spoil anything. Something from the beginning ties into the end of this thing. And something from the beginning tied into the fate of one of the characters. And then, hold on a second. This is all we're getting. The beginning of that movie could have been a lame flashback, but it was a foreshadowing of things. And I started to think more about these characters and what they had gone through and what they wanted for themselves and what we saw at the beginning. There's one of the characters is an investment banker or a business executive or something in France, and to see a person in that environment go into the environment that we see him in at the end of the movie, the more I thought about that and the more I felt about that, the more I started to go, I want to watch this again and see these people before all this happens to them. And I did, and it was amazing. It was even better the second time through because I had time to think about it more. It's an experience very much like Blade Runner was for me, where I saw it and I didn't think anything at all about it, and then I sat with it for a little bit, and creeped up on me. The questions that it left in my mind and the stuff that it made me feel and think about sort of crept up on me when I was out doing other shit, and I really wanted to see it a second time, and I did, and that's when it became basically a new classic in my life.
Okay, so well, with that said, if you haven't seen the movie, do go watch it. If you can see it spoiler free, do. We're going into spoilers now because I want to really talk about the themes of the movie.
Fair.
And Gabe has given you his polite warning of I don't want to spoil this, so here's your get off now if you don't want sort of point. So the film is about a mob driver, a dodgy banker, a hitman, and our fourth character is a little complicated politically. I'm just going to say that he is a Palestinian who did a bomb attack in Israel. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to use any labels because I'm not educated on the situation. They all do things that William Friedkin says in his interviews. They do bad things and then they go and they run away. And he viewed the film as like a fate, basically. The reason the movie is called Sorcerer is because, and this is a little shaky, but we'll go for it. The reason the film's called Sorcerer is because he viewed a sorcerer as like dark magic, like fate, the ties that bind. And one of the two vehicles that they have to drive through the desert is called Sorcerer. So the plot in more detail is that they go and they are all in exile in this South American town. A few dozen miles across the road, an oil drilling site, it goes up, and there's a massive jet of flame, and the only way they can get rid of it is by detonating dynamite to smother the flame. The issue is that the dynamite has been sitting in a shed in the Amazon for months to years, and it's
decomposing.
Yeah, it's decomposing. It is volatile. And one of the guys says to another worker, "Can we take it by helicopter?" And he essentially gets the response, "Are you an idiot? You want to take this volatile substance that could explode at any minute via helicopter, bouncing around, air turbulence? Get real. Not doing it." So they go to the town where all these people are in exile, and they say, "We need drivers. You might not come back, but the pay is going to be ridiculous." So loads of people try out for this driving job, and three of our four main characters and one side character get in. The fourth one is a German who, if I remember right, is actually a Nazi.
Yes.
And he gets the job as well. But he gets killed by the hitman, who sees it as an opportunity to him get out, and the hitman basically leverages it as, well, I guess I'm your fourth guy. So they now have to transport this dynamite from point A to point B. Good luck, have fun. It's the jungle, it's rocky, it's bumpy. And from there, the movie, and this happens at about the halfway point where the plot really picks up. From there, the movie becomes the ultimate stressful job simulator, which we have talked about before.
Yes. True. That's right.
So I should show this to my dad because he's a heavy goods driver. He'd just be there. Sweating.
do that. Actually, saying that, he'd probably like it or relate to it at least. I want to say I did end up thinking to myself, would the helicopter really have been less? Would really have been less dangerous than?
I think
trucking through.
It might have been less dangerous, but I think the thought is that if the trucks blow up, you've lost a truck. If the helicopter blows up, you've lost a helicopter.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. So they.
It doesn't matter. It's a even if it would have made more sense to take the helicopter, it doesn't matter. It's a movie.
So So yeah, so that is the plot. Now they have got to get through the jungle. They've got to drive around these really tight, narrow, like cliffside roads, and of course, like the scene that we're absolutely going to talk about, going across that fucking bridge.
Yeah.
What's on the poster of the movie? Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Probably, if anything was a harbinger of the special effects to come in the next decade that followed this movie, I think that bridge scene was one of them.
Well, yeah, because William Friedkin wanted to shoot it during a rainstorm, and the unfortunate thing for him, but more importantly for the people that are actually in the village, is that him arriving at that village brought a drought. So obviously the people in the village, they're actually terrified because the director of The Exorcist has shown up in their village, and all of a sudden there's a drought in a rainforest. So they actually had to they built the bridge. They wanted to get across the bridge to do the shoot, and then the river dried up. So they went further along, built a second bridge that apparently cost like another $1 million or something like that, and then it dried up again. And in the end, I think they might have used something like water cannons or something like that to simulate it and simulate a storm. You would never have known. You would never have known.
No, definitely not. And it's worth saying, we're breaking it up a little bit, and it's a little bit jumbly, but it's worth saying that this movie's budget was the equivalent of like a Marvel movie today. It had an enormous budget.
Mm. And that a little bit of that is crazy to me, because I wouldn't have expected this movie to have had a huge budget.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because I would sort of think of it as a South American country. It probably doesn't cost as much to shoot there as, building all of that set in, like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did.
Right. Yeah, you'd think a lot of the natural like effects or whatever, mostly due to the location.
But then you look at that very real giant towering oil fire, and you go, "Oh, maybe that was where the budget went."
Right? Yeah, definitely the pyrotechnics. Still $25 million in '77 for that. Yeah, I actually don't. I see it on screen in the special effects, but I don't necessarily, like you said, I don't necessarily see it in the locations, and I definitely don't see it in the actors' salaries. I don't think Roy Scheider was pulling down that much money at that point, even after Jaws.
Yeah, and the other actors were, I would say they weren't particularly well known. I wouldn't say they were that well known before or after this film.
Yeah, I agreed.
But yeah, so they have to. They start to transport the dynamite. They get very, very far in, and then in genuinely the last 15 minutes of the movie, at the point where you're like, okay, we're sort of in the clear now. You kind of think they're going to be dropping one by one as the film goes on. No, last 15 minutes of the movie, they all fucking die.
Yep. Every single one of them, and including the one guy who survives. When I mentioned before, the beginning was a bunch of harbingers. The guys that Scheider screwed over caught up with him at the end, and it all came full circle.
So, I viewed the jungle in this film as being like purgatory.
Yeah.
It was like this space in limbo where they couldn't escape. It was like the jungle was like a physical manifestation of what they had done and how they couldn't get away from it. And eventually, like by the time that final ending happened and Roy Scheider gets capped, like you can't escape your past. There is no start over, start new. It's always with you. Just like you are always in the jungle. And that was sort of how I viewed it, as the jungle kind of being this oppressive force, because the jungle in this, and And I differ from Gabe in that I really like Papillon. The jungle in Papillon is not as oppressive as the jungle in Sorcerer. The jungle in Sorcerer, like the jungle in Papillon, it's the prison that you want to escape, and when they're in the jungle, you're like, okay, they're in the jungle, they're not in the prison anymore, they can get through. The jungle in Sorcerer is a nightmare. They finally get across this terrible bridge. Let's talk about the bridge. They have to get across, you know, that bridge that Indiana Jones cuts down in the Temple of Doom to escape the bad guys? Right, they've got to get an SUV across it. The whole thing is shaking back and forth. The rain is hammering. The rain is so thick that you, as the audience member, actually can't see that much past the rain. And you've got one guy's going to have to drive it. The other guy's got to guide it. So it's like me and Gabriel are trying to do this, and Gabriel is behind the wheel, and I'm getting out, and I'm like waving him on, essentially. Like these characters that they are trying to wave it on, and they'd be like left, right, and then finally Roy Scheider and his partner, the hitman, they get through, and you're like, okay, well, they're out of the woods. And earlier in the film, you think that they've taken different paths, and you're going to see something else for the banker and the Palestinian. Nope. The fork in the road takes them to the same bridge.
Yeah.
And then they do it again, but they do it worse, because the Palestinian fella, he like falls through the bridge for a moment, and the Frenchman is driving, but he just thinks he can't see him because of the road, so he keeps driving forward, going like, "Oh, where are you, mate, where are you?" Meanwhile, his truck is about to run over this fucking guy. It's the pouring rain. I'm like, well, I think he might be going out here, lads. So like it's the most like it's the weirdest bait and switch ever, where they somehow shock you and hit you with the exact same scene twice, and it really works
in a new way. Yeah, it does, absolutely.
But they get through that. And what did you think of that whole sequence?
I thought that it was incredibly well done. I thought that I can't add to what you just said except to say that it was very stressful, and and in just the way that it should be in a scene like that.
So they get a bit further, and this is what where I really like to highlight is that the characters, they all make sense. They get through all of this, and then they finally find a massive tree blocking the road.
Yeah.
Roy Scheider, he snaps, and he just starts trying to cut down the trees with a machete to see if they can just drive the truck around. And obviously this isn't going to work. Then the Palestinian guy goes and sits on it, he knocks on it, and he goes, "I can blow it up." Because he's a bombs expert. And I was watching this scene, and I'm trying to keep up with what's going on, because he's tying like a string and then a sandbag, and I'm going, okay, so he'll let the sandbag go, and when that goes, like, the thing's going to drop and blow it up. But why doesn't he just like cut the sandbag? And then when he because I'm thinking that he's going to cut the line and the sandbag is going to drop, the bomb is going to go down basically and blow the tree up. That's what I'm thinking. Right.
Yeah.
This is why I don't work in demolition, because what he actually does is he gets a stick, he stabs the sandbag, and the sand slowly starts to pour out, and he runs. because it's given him time to get away. And I was thinking, I would have blown myself up there.
Yeah.
But I love that scene just because of how methodical the whole thing is, and how they all have to kind of pitch together and work together, even though they're kind of against each other, and they're also kind of hoping that every one guy is hoping that the other three die, so that they can get more money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they blow the tree up, and this is really funny. This is really funny. They only had one take to blow this tree up because it was real. So William Friedkin called in like a renowned arsonist from from America, and I don't know what you have to do to become a renowned arsonist, but it doesn't sound like the sort of person you would normally hire based on those skills. But he
Wow.
got an arsonist to come in and just figure it out and be like, yeah, I know how to blow this up, and then it got the right sort of demolition stuff, and then they had to time it all for the moment it dropped to blow the tree up for real, and they just, by luck really, and by this arsonist being very good at blowing things up, managed to get a clear pathway out of it. Which I thought was fascinating to hear about.
Yeah, yeah. As I'm fond of saying in situations like this, that is what we used to call filmmaking.
I expected you to say that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the scene at the end of The Duelist where the sun peeks out just at the right time. You just get lucky. You're doing everything right, and then something happens that you can't plan for. That's just perfect.
Yeah.
The shot you need.
Well, here's a great example of that, because they were trying to get lucky. So when at the beginning of the film, when Roy Scheider's driving away from mob people and the car gets flipped, they flipped the car, and William Friedkin went, didn't like it, not what I want, get me another car. I wonder where that budget came from.
Yeah.
So they got
good point.
another car. They did it again. It's not what I'm looking for. It doesn't look right. We'll do it again. In the end,
Jesus.
and I don't know what they were doing before. I really don't know what they were doing before. I wish I could ask him, because so the story goes, what they did for the final take was they actually hired a stunt driver. And he went, okay, so what do you need it to do? And he's like, yeah, I need it to flip, and I need it to skid, and I need it to smash into the fire hydrant. And the stunt driver went, cool, I got you. And he did it. And then they got it in the take that they needed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, badass stunt driver. But what were they doing before?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question.
If you were my producer and I wrote that into a script, surely the first thing you'd go is, oh yeah, and we need a stunt driver for that scene.
You start planning the stunt. Yeah. That reminds me, and having looked into a little bit of the production here and a little bit of William Friedkin's habits of putting people in danger in order to get the shots that he once, it reminded me of something that Nick Meyer said once, and he said when an actor meets a director for the first time, one of the first things on their mind is he crazy? And if he is crazy, how crazy is he? And reading that, I just thought, yeah, I get that now. I get why actors might think something like that when you've got a guy like what Friedkin was known for.
Oh yeah, William Friedkin, bit of a naughty boy, to be honest.
Yeah.
But these were back in the days when the filmmaker kind of did whatever they wanted. I mean, for all we can say about William Friedkin being a bit of a naughty boy, at least he's not Kubrick, who was a psychopath.
Mm-hmm. Or the guy who murdered those kids and an actor with a helicopter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, crazy stuff there. I want to know what he did before they got the stunt driver. But I also, by the way,
yeah, I do too.
I like the visual symmetry of the fire hydrant blowing up just a fountain of water like a geyser, and that
I noticed that too. I noticed that when I talk about foreshadowing. I noticed that too.
Yeah,
I noticed
the jet of flame.
And also the violence in the movie. I really like the fact that if I remember correctly, in the car sequence, there wasn't any music. There wasn't any backing music telling you how to feel about it, and that's always more chilling than if there is. And in that decade, that was pretty common to have ominous music playing when stuff like that happened.
Yeah, I mean, to use a comparison, I also watched a Steve McQueen film that weekend called Bullet, which was like a kind of neo noir's not quite the right term because it's older than that, but like the sort of role you expect Steve McQueen to be in. He's the gritty cop, and he's got to stop the baddie, and there is this incredible chase scene in that film, and it's brilliant even for the standards of today. And they did it in, I think, 1969 maybe. And I was like, whoa, this thing is really good, and it's so incredibly shot. How did they do it? What technology did they use? It's brilliant. But that has, like moments of music to kind of intensify, and the whole point is like it's this big epic chase. Sorcerer just kind of feels like you're in the car, and it's not glamorous in any way. It's just, oh no. And I think a lot of this film is, oh no, like when the oil fire first goes up and they bring out they drive into the village, and they bring out the bodies of the people that burned up, and you just hear like gradually that entire crowd just fall silent.
Yeah.
Before they just erupt into a riot.
Then they explode. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I hate to say this, that scene in particular, when they started handing out the charred bodies, that was so chilling and so devastating and so shocking. There was a problem in that scene, and that's that some of the extras did not look the way they were supposed to look. I noticed that there was a lot of bad acting in the pool of extras there. Unfortunately, that did stand out to me in that scene. But putting that aside, that was very effective.
The film makes even like really simple things become kind of terrifying. Like when there's just a cheeky indigenous fella who sees the trucks coming along, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna fuck with these white boys, and he just starts doing like his little jog in front of the truck to just be annoying towards them, but they've got dynamite in the back that could blow at any moment, and you're like, oh my god, get out of the fucking road, man. Get out of the road.
This has nothing to do with our review. That scene stood out to me in a way that I'm going to talk to you about off mic.
That stood out to you based on the time that you did that once to someone.
No, that when I talked about Dan and I's quirky sense of humor, that's one of them. That's what I. Yeah, get to them. What a weird.
Just a little
idiot.
Offbeat. Roy Scheider being so tired and done, they just go to him, you're not Latino, you don't even speak Spanish, and he's just kind of like, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Sure, whatever.
Yes, I love that.
They literally, they don't like, this isn't obviously not the name they use, but they look at him like, you don't look like a Juan Manuel Marquez, friend.
No, he doesn't.
You look like your name's Scotty Lieberman.
Yes. Oh, that was good. That's a good movie.
So, yeah, I mean, fascinating to me that you went from to one of my new favourite films. So a film like this, because we attempted to record a Dick Tracy episode, which is the reason that there's 2 Andrew episodes in a row. And what we found was we got on there and we started going, yeah, I mean, the film looks great. The visual style is very unique. And then it just turned into us just not talking about the film, and we just couldn't stay on topic at all. And
basically using the same shade of, so we're talking about Dick Tracy for a second. So basically all we ended up saying was using the same shade color for every color in the film. Like every red is the same red, every blue is the same blue. Looked really cool. I'm surprised it's never been done again. I think Warren Beatty made the best Dick Tracy movie that could possibly be made. Respect him for being such a fan that he wanted to do it justice. I think he did. Madonna, we talked about Madonna in the movie and the pitfalls of her. Big
Stephen
Boy Caprice is my.
Sondheim, say Stephen Sondheim doing the
Yeah.
music, and how
Yes.
that's kind of got like little links that, because I was hoping that there would be something more to talk about there, because Sondheim, we have talked about Sondheim before, we're going to talk about him again, but they're just like Big Boy Caprice is your spirit animal.
My spirit animal. Yes.
But
He's the voice. He's what the inside of my head sounds like. And then what else are you going to say? There's not much to say about Dick Tracy. Speaking of music, the soundtrack in Sorcerer.
Tangerine
Holy
Dream.
shit! Yeah, Tangerine Dream did a lot of video games, did a lot of movies, did a whole lot of stuff. Is still going strong today. Although their I believe their founding members passed away. They're still carrying on, and that had the most oddball but oddly appropriate soundtrack for a movie in the 70s. It was really good, and it was really another harbinger of what Hollywood would become. This movie was really ahead of its time.
And it's fascinating because it's not the sort of sounds that you're expecting to be in a jungle movie. Like, you might be expecting a bit of like Caribbean steel drums or something a lot more generic, not Tangerine Dream. And what happened was Tangerine Dream were playing in whichever town, I can't remember, that The Exorcist was shot in. And William Friedkin was like, "Oh, I'm in town. Let's see this small music act at this small concert. I've got nothing else to do." So he went, on his off time, and he saw them. And I wouldn't say he discovered them, because they had a respectable following, but they weren't megastars or anything. And he'd never heard of them before. Never mind heard them. And then he immediately approached them after the concert and said, "Hi, I'm William Friedkin. I made The French Connection. I'm doing a film called The Exorcist. Would you please do the score for my next movie?" And Tangerine Dream went, "Yes, absolutely. What's your next movie about?" And he went, "I don't know yet, but when I know what it is, I'm going to call you, and could you please do the score for it?" And that was how they made the agreement, essentially.
Wow.
He didn't even know he was going to make Sorcerer, but he knew he wanted Tangerine Dream to do the music.
Wow. That I did not know. That's incredible. Well, I'm glad they did. And somehow they were able to make that kind of music work in a movie, as you say, that takes place in the jungle. That's incredible.
Oh, and very brief aside, because we talked about Godzilla last week, and we spoke so much about so many things about Godzilla, we forgot to mention one of the most iconic parts of it, and Gabriel was kicking himself, and so was I. The score for Godzilla is maybe the best score ever.
It's absolutely incredible, and I can't believe I didn't talk about that. Okay, if we're batting cleanup here, we talked a little bit about Dick Tracy. I guess I'll supplement Godzilla. That's a good idea. Yes, the music in Godzilla was absolutely phenomenal, and it changed the way that a movie from that era comes off to me. Because it usually comes off as hokey, and the music is hokey, and it has this general hokiness that Godzilla was able to avoid because of the lighting and the cinematography, and most especially the soundtrack and the score was just incredible.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But now we got that little aside done. Yeah, back to Sorcerer. So,
yeah.
So when you say, because I am curious as to, so Papillon didn't work for you because you felt that it was like, I get it, prison sucks, I wouldn't want to be there either, but I think what you actually said was like something to the effect of, I'd feel bad for anyone in this situation. That doesn't mean that the characters are working for me. And you said for this one, like you wanted to go back and see what those characters were like before they were in the jungle. What did you find with them?
Well, what I found was that whichever character you're talking about, by the time you see whichever character you're talking about at the beginning of the film, by the time you see them at the end of the film, they're different. But they have managed to hang on to, like the guy. So now that we're doing spoilers, the business executive or whoever it is that is in trouble, and
You'd think he wouldn't stand a chance in the jungle, but he adapts really well.
He did really well. He did really good. I was proud of him. His wife or girlfriend, I think it's his wife, gave him a watch at the beginning of the film, and the very last thing that he does in his life in the film is talk about the watch and what his wife meant to him before he gets blown the fuck up.
It's just from a pot in the road. Like, they don't do anything wrong. That's the thing. When I say that it's like your past comes back to you, and like I guess what William Friedkin said with like a sorcerer, like dark magic, just unfairness. They did everything right, and then they just hit a pot in the road and blew up.
Yeah. And that's it. And yeah, exactly. And it was, but and he was explaining what that watch meant to him to the other guy, and that shot of Roy Scheider and the other guy looking at the smoke plume from that truck, the amount of time that the movie stayed on that was really effective and really good. But to answer your question a little bit more, what I found was that these were people. You seeing them as ordinary people with ordinary lives was shocking after having seen the movie from beginning to end, and whatever lack of depth you might have for being able to only devote 10 minutes at a time to establishing these characters, that really says something when you watch the movie again, and it's shocking to see them as just normal people.
I mean, this movie is paced in a very unusual way too.
Well, let me say something about that. I also thought, since we're comparing this to Papillon, I thought Papillon was paced abysmally in my experience. I thought this one was paced really well. You never see or feel the same thing twice in this movie. You get 4 different stories with 4 different emotional overtones that are sort of tied in as oh God, they're in trouble and they have to leave now. But there's 4 completely different people with 4 completely different emotional overtones, and then you get them trying to establish in South America, and then you get the dynamite thing, and then you get the stressful truck simulator, and then you get the end of the film when it's all tied up and he gets that letter and he's like, oh fuck, I'm dead. And you never see or feel the same thing twice. The movie is always moving towards something. And not to as they say in your country, slag off Papillon. I don't mean to do that. It just as a comparison, I didn't feel you ever had that with Papillon. I felt like I was watching the same thing happening over and over and over again, which it kind of was. That was kind of the point of Papillon, because prison life is kind of monotonous and stuff. So that was fine. But in any case, I really like the way this movie was paced for a 2-hour movie. 2 hours is pretty long for a movie these days. We're not quite used to that anymore. And that, I thought it didn't feel its length, and that's surprising.
I mean, the only one that you don't see very much is a part in Mexico with Francisco Rabal's character, the hitman, where he just walks in, shoots someone, and then he's gone from the movie literally until we come back, and we find out literally nothing about him. Yeah. Other than, I mean, I think we're only assuming he's a hitman. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if that's necessarily true.
Well, what I like about that is there's a lot that you can infer from the way that instead of the word assume, I would say infer. There's a lot that you can infer, and that's another thing that I liked about these characters. Their emotional resonances, you get just enough to know what's motivating them, and they're all different things, but you get just enough to know what's motivating them, apart from the fact that they're in exile and what their original lives were, and it leaves everything else to the imagination. And that's another thing I liked about watching it a second time, is that I liked seeing these characters a lot, and I liked seeing them in their normal environments, and I liked that it did leave that much to the imagination.
So Francisco Rabal, who played Nilo, when we talk about him and what you can infer, now I think he is a fantastic actor, and apparently this was like the only Hollywood movie he ever did, and he was a little bit disappointed with it. He said, all my life I wanted to make a Hollywood movie. When I finally did, it was filmed in Paris, Israel, Mexico and the Dominican Republic.
Oh.
But he wanted to film in Hollywood, like the glitz and glamour.
Yeah.
But I think he's fantastic in this. I think he's absolutely fantastic in this. He is suave, he's charming, and he's also kind of terrifying. Like, he just... Like, the second he doesn't get the job, and you're like, okay, one of these fellas is going out, and I think it's going to be the German guy, seeing as he didn't have a vignette about him. Yeah. And because he was friends with his name's Kasim. Wikipedia calls him an Arab bomber terrorist. I thought he was meant to be a Palestinian. I might be wrong, but those two.
He was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was meant to be a Palestinian.
That's what I thought, because it was in Israel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in Jerusalem. So he's hanging out with the Nazi guy, and I'll leave that there. I don't really know what William Friedkin was really going for, but like the first...
Actually, I have a lot to say about...
Because he starts going... he starts calling Nilo a Zionist after Nilo kills the German.
Yeah.
What was you going to say then?
Well, one of the things we know is that a lot of the Nazis who escaped prosecution did in fact go to Central and South America, and that I think I didn't know this. I didn't know this. Yeah, my understanding is that because there's one of the reasons if memory serves, one of the reasons that conspiracy theory exists that Hitler actually survived and lived in South America or Central America was that it was common for Nazi officers who fleeing prosecution to go and live there, kind of in exile. I'm pretty sure that is the case, and I'm fairly certain that's why it appears in this movie.
It completely would add up in that case. But yeah, like, Kasim is mad that his friend gets killed by Nilo, and he calls him a Zionist, like a murdering Zionist and stuff like that, because he killed a Nazi. I don't think there was any sort of political motivation there for Nilo. I just think he thought that the old German guy was in his way, and the old German guy was the one he could most conveniently take out.
I agree. That's how I took it too. Yeah,
because the other guys were all younger than him. The other guys were all younger than him. That looks to me like he'd be like, but if I try to go after these three that are younger than me, there's going to be a fight. The German's old. I'll be able to take him out easier. And I think it was literally just that he was in the way.
And it could also be that him being a Nazi was sort of the icing on the cake, as it were.
Yeah, it's like, why not?
Yeah, why not kill the Nazi? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, him being a hitman, that also kind of comes back around when him and Roy Scheider are the only guys left, and they get pulled over by the I'm going to call them a militia group. I don't know what the deal is.
Militia, yeah.
And they get pulled over, and they're like, we need... What have you got in the back? And he's like, supplies. And they're like, okay, take us there. And then Nilo just waiting there for the right moment, and then just shoots one of them.
He capped those guys. He capped them cold. Yeah. That was awesome. I loved that part.
When they say show, don't tell, and it's like, you only get shown things with Nilo, and he is a dangerous dude. Yeah. But what I think is so fantastic is when he pulls his gun on Roy Scheider, when they have a disagreement, Roy Scheider barely gives a fuck. Mm-hmm. Like, he pulls a gun on him, and Roy Scheider, he just, like, he doesn't quite no-sell it, but he just doesn't care. He's like, all right,
little bit no-selled, yeah.
Yeah, like, all right, throw your toys out of the pram and pull your gun on me. Yeah, that'll solve this problem, you fucking man, baby. It's like kind of the vibe that he's got going there. But I think my favourite character out of these guys was the Frenchman, Victor Manzon, or Serrano, as he gets known there. I really liked him. I think he had a lot of charm when that old Latina lady gives him like a crucifix or something like that, and they go, "What was all that about?" And he just gives him a wink. He's got a lot of charm about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I liked him too. It was him and Roy Scheider were my two favorites. I liked all of them, but those two particularly, yeah, were really good characters, really good performances.
Yeah, and the few scenes that don't follow them, they have and I don't think films would do this so much now, of leaving the movie to do some exposition with a minor supporting role and just a guy. When they cut away and they have that guy who works in the local area talking to his boss in the office, going, "Yeah, it's fucking blown up. We need to do something about it." Yeah. I think a lot of films today probably wouldn't have bothered to include that. They just would have had the rig blow up, and then you would infer the rest.
Yeah.
The thing is that I'm reluctant to say, though, that was something that could have been cut, because even if maybe it could have, just because you can cut something doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Yeah.
But yeah. Shall we start wrapping this one up?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think we've said most of what we had to say, and I genuinely, sincerely hope that people watch this movie. It was not easy to get a hold of for most of the time that it's been out, and it's very easy to get a hold of a good copy of it now.
Yeah, and if you get the 40th anniversary, not 40th anniversary, if you get the Blu-ray, get the new like the new edition Blu-ray, and you not only get this fantastic film, but you get a sit-down interview with William Friedkin and Nicholas Winding Refn, who directed Drive, and you get to see William Friedkin just roast Refn for about 60 minutes straight. Where Refn's, he's trying to like poke fun and be like, yeah, well, you see, I'm the young version of you. I'm the William Friedkin of today. So what advice have you got for me? And William Friedkin's just like, you ain't got shit on me.
Dang, I gotta see that.
Yeah, I think it was more playful than people made out, but it's very, very funny, and you do get to see two good directors attempt to have a conversation about filmmaking, but I don't think they ever really get there. But yeah, the film it's very easy to get hold of, and also what I really, really like about it is it's nothing like The Exorcist, and it's nothing like The French Connection. He made 3 masterpieces, like one after the other, and they are different genres, they're different styles. The Exorcist was like a living nightmare. Sorcerer doesn't really attempt to scare you, it just attempts to really, really stress you out. But
yes,
there's a lot of jungle movies out there, and we're going to be talking about more of them as this show goes on. But this one is peak 70s jungle movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's all I've got to say about it. Sorcerer, yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Go check it out. Absolutely terrible, terrible, terrible title, but watch it.
Oh, is it you? So you didn't think the title was very fitting then, or
no? What the fuck? Someone's gonna look at that and think that it's a magic movie or another horror. If they know that it's the guy that did The Exorcist, they're gonna expect a horror movie. Or who the fuck is gonna even know what movie they're seeing by that? No, stupid title.
I mean, you haven't said anything that everyone doesn't seem to think. I kind of like it. I like the title. I like that it's just one word, Sorcerer. But it is a stretch. Like
I gotta wrap this up. But I have to say, one of the first scenes you see is the assassin shooting somebody, and I looked at that and I went, assassin, sorcerer. Sorcerer kind of sounds like it could be plausibly the title of a Bond film. Is this like a spy movie? Literally, I thought that to myself. Terrible title.
Wait, did you not know what this film was going in then?
No, nothing. I knew nothing about it, and I was happy knowing nothing about it.
No, I mean, awesome. Well, yeah, probably shouldn't have been called Sorcerer. I mean, I'm not very clever. I didn't even clock that the truck was called Sorcerer. And I mean, they do a whole montage of building the truck and then like an epic spotlight and silhouette of the truck. And I didn't notice that the truck was called Sorcerer.
I didn't notice it either. Call it Kaboom. Call it fucking anything besides Sorcerer. With that, we'll see you guys next time. I don't like plugging what movie we're going to watch because 50% of the time I change my mind about it. But our next one may indeed feature another film about the jungle with a very different emotional overtone. So stay tuned for that.
All right. See you later.